This is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show devoted to the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Brian Searl and Kara Sismadia. You'll hear from special guests that focus on topics to help your business succeed, all backed by Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome everybody to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. I should clear the air here just for a second and say that we are no longer having a co-host on the show. So Kara was recently appointed the president of the Canadian Camping and RV Council. Super excited for her and her new career direction and all those kinds of things. And so obviously with that comes additional responsibilities, and she had to cut the show out of her daily or weekly schedule, I guess. So maybe we'll bring another co-host. I'm not sure if we will, but for now, I'm going to lead the pack and try to shut up as often as possible so our wonderful guests can actually give you some insights and useful information. But just to clear the air there, I know our intro still says that, but one day I'll get to redoing it in a couple months or something like that. So super excited to have our regular campground owner focused episode back here. We've got a couple new recurring guests, one who's an old recurring guest who is just super busy, Shaun. Super excited to have you here for your first week, and then looking forward to future visits. And then we have Whitney, who from KOA, who is a first time here. Looking forward to having her join us once a month to talk about KOA's monthly research reports and all the just tons of insight and data that KOA has as one of the leaders in our industry. Excited to welcome back Scott Knepp as one of our recurring guests. And then we've got two special guests here, Shaun H. from Boyd's Campground, who is going to talk to us about some of the challenges and rewards of operating a campground. He's got a 60-year history up there. And then we've got Keva from Boheme Retreats, the director of operations. She's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that she does at that property. So why don't we have the two special guests just briefly introduce themselves first. So Keva, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So yes, my name is Keva, and I'm the director of Boheme Retreats. And we are essentially developing campgrounds that feature vintage campers. So bringing that nostalgic vibe to the campgrounds and giving people a different type of experience. Our focus is also of really trying to create more inclusive camping spaces. So everything we're doing, we're really trying to be intentional in that. And this season, we're really seeing a lot of growth and a lot of BIPOC people coming to the campground. So we're really excited about this year and just seeing a little bit of change within the RV camping experience.
Awesome. I'm excited to dive into that with you in a few minutes here. Shaun, do you want to tell us about Boyd's Campground? Shaun H., sorry.
Shaun H. Good afternoon, everybody. Shaun from Boyd's Key West Campground in sunny Key West, Florida. We're a 60-year business, third generation working on a fourth, still family owned. And we've obviously seen generational campers as well as some of the new campers coming in and just looking to keep up the camping experience and keep it at a 5-star level. And, we love coming to work every day.
I mean, I would too. Like that, I feel like that's the secret. Like if you're going to own a campground, Key West is not a bad place to do it in. So
not bad at all. We're glad other people love Key West as well. It keeps us busy.
Awesome. Shaun, our recurring guest, Shaun V. Tell us about 4 Points RV Resort briefly. Just want to introduce what 4 Points is, kind of what your mission is and your goal. And
Sure. Yeah. 4 Points RV Resorts. We are a multi-park owner operator. We currently hold 4 Jellystone properties. And 2 independent properties, and we're looking to get to 10 over the next 18 to 24 months. We've been in business in this space since early 2019, and my background prior to that was multifamily real estate, apartment buildings, mobile home parks and things like that. So we've transitioned from that space into the RV, and it's been a lot more fun, I can tell you, than traditional multifamily real estate.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you here. I definitely want to dive into more of the 4 Point story here. Before I do that and talk to our special guest here, we've got a couple other things that we're going to talk about throughout the show. But is Scott or Whitney, is there anything that's come across your desk recently that you feel is like we must talk about right now before we talk to our special guest and Shaun?
No, not from my end. I'm excited to get to know our special guests a little bit better and to talk about operations.
Awesome. All right, Whitney, same thing.
Well, I always have something to talk about,
We'll go for
but
it.
I feel like, at some point I'd love to talk about the new research that we have, but I'm really interested to hear from our special guests.
I definitely want to talk about the research for sure. We're gonna devote a big chunk of time to that. I promise you. I just want to do that. I want to get them out of the way because I'll talk about the research for a long time, and our audience might want to hear from everybody else too. So let's start with Keva from Boheme Retreats. So you talked a little bit about your intro and what your mission is, but how did you guys get started? What is your dive a little bit more into the inclusive nature of what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, so we started last season was last year. So we had a soft launch last year. So this is sort of like our first full season. And I come from a design and renovation background, and I fell in love with renovating vintage campers. And sort of just like taking it on these adventures, people started reaching out like, oh, can you drop it off at a campground for me? Can I borrow it? And it really just started getting me thinking, there's obviously people who are interested in this experience. And that's sort of just how Boheme Retreats, came about. We set up with 3 campers, and this year we have 5, and we're sort of just expanding that as we go. And our hope is really just to bring more people, to the Catskills. We're located in Livingston Manor, New York. And so, our target market really is like city dwellers. I actually live in Brooklyn. And so just really trying to make it easy for people to get out of their concrete jungles and, really enjoy nature, that's so close to them.
Do you feel like, is that what really either sets it apart today, or what your goal is to eventually set it apart? Is it the vintage trailers, or are there other things that you feel set you apart from the other campgrounds in the area, resorts in the area?
Well, definitely, having like this retro vibe, and all of our campers are from the 60s and 70s really sets us apart. But like I said, also just really, I find that our guests really like the idea that we're focusing on creating more diversity within the space. It's just something, like we did a lot of research and talking to people, and that's something that, especially for people within the cities, they're used to being in diverse settings, and just really, bringing that to the camping space.
Awesome. If you had your goal, right? And I know this is a open-ended question, I'll put you on the spot, right? But if you had your goal, where would Boheme Retreats be in 5 years? Do you see yourself owning multiple parks? Do you just want to focus on this one in the Catskills?
So our goal has always sort of like, when we first started, it was like, oh, we're going to have a campground west of the Hudson, east of the Hudson. So we're really focusing on that right now. And
Okay.
then, yeah, definitely I could see this, expanding. I feel like there's other vintage, campgrounds in different parts of the country, but I feel like in the Northeast that there's not very many of them. So I definitely think there's space for us to expand.
I mean, all these ideas interest me, right? And the group can comment on this if they want. But I think this is what, as we head into, I don't want to say necessarily a down economy, because I think camping overall is going to be just fine, right? But I think that there's value in differentiating yourself. We were talking, I think, last week on the glamping episode with our regular recurring guest there about how there was a rush into glamping, and then, it was no problem in 21 and 22 filling up glamping sites. But now it's become how is your glamping site different than every other glamping site? And so I think the things like vintage trailers are going to help you tell that story easier from a marketing branding perspective. And I think you'll be just fine as long as you have one of those stories to tell. Is that concurrable with the group here, or am I way off base?
I couldn't agree with that more. I think that you're absolutely right that, it used to be just the concept of glamping was enough of a differentiator, but now everyone's really trying to get into glamping. I love the whole vintage idea, and I think that is like such a cool concept. And to your point, Brian, I think the campgrounds that we see be really successful have a story to tell. They've got a narrative, they've got a story. And then fortunately, there are brands that exist like the KOA where that's kind of built in, like, here's your identity. But I think for smaller independent organizations, it can be harder to tell, here's your narrative, here's your story. But so I think there's marketing benefits to that, but I also would think that there's operational benefit to that, because I know that anytime you're in a quandrum operationally, hitting pause and thinking about what is it that we value, what is our story, what is our origin place, what are our roots, what's our foundation, and having that identity helps you answer those questions.
It's actually a very interesting point. And Whitney, maybe, hopefully you don't mind me putting you on the spot here, but I'm just curious. Like, he is right. I think we all agree that there's value in having a packaged brand like KOA that has a long history behind it. People know what they expect, the quality, all this kinds of things, right? Is there a value, though, in breaking down, and I know you do it a little bit with the resorts and the holidays and the journeys, but is there value in an identity within an identity, from a marketing or branding standpoint?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting kind of market solution, right? There's the benefits of a brand, but then how do we be unique? And that's what a lot of people want. It's kind of like the McDonald's model, like what you're going to get, and sometimes that's really valuable. And at other times, like, you want something very, very unique, which Keva is offering. One of the things about KOA is that we actually, because we're like a franchise company and we do have that separation of brands, but we also have like a lot of differentiation between the 500 campgrounds. We have a belief statement that, each of our campgrounds is unique, but collectively we are better together. So we actually try to cultivate some entrepreneurial kind of exploration in what type of accommodations there are. And some, from patio sites, there's a lot of innovation. So while we do put up some like gray rails, we want some like creativity and flexibility. But to Keva's point, I would also say that what she's doing is not just providing a vintage trailer, she's providing an experience, that inclusive and intentional experience that she's building at her campground. That's something that there are the people that are looking for those unique experience and the Instagrammable moment, but that's not repeatable if they don't feel a sense of welcome. They're not going to be like, oh, I want to go back to Keva's resort, and so there's something bigger in the sense of outdoor hospitality as we look at glamping and camping, is that it's not just the accommodation, it's that whole experience on the campground that's really going to keep our campers coming back and keep camping, whether it's at, KOA or a Boheme resort.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And I do love the flexibility of it, right? Because you see, not really in camping, but you see a lot of franchises who will just lock down their franchisee, like my parents on a couple Subways, right? Sorry, Subway, if you're listening, I feel like you're not. But they're just very rigid with, right, you have to offer a specific sandwich at a specific price and a specific variance and specific vendors. And I love the fact that KOA gives the ability for you to have that flexibility and just that guidance to bring in, like you're saying, the entrepreneurial innovation stuff, right? That's the only way I could ever own a franchise, would be to give the guide rails, but give me that little bit of freedom to innovate. So a softball question.
We'd be happy to have you, Brian.
I'm not brave enough to own a campground. No way. No way. I can barely handle posting on Facebook or whatever I do all day. So, Shaun, softball question. I'm going to toss it to you. So 4 points. What is the experience that you're going after, like keeping with the same theme that we're talking about, right? How do you handle that at 4 points?
Sure. So I would agree as well, is that, it's ultimately about the experience that we see that the customer has while they're there, regardless if they're staying in one of our glamping units or if they're staying in their RV, is at the park itself. We want to create an experience, and our target audience is families with children between the ages of 5 and 12, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger. But we are really trying to, especially with the Jellystone brand, is we're trying to bring in that experience, whether it's activities, interactions with characters, water features and things like that. What we've seen over the past 3 years is, to your point earlier, is that we've seen, as soon as we put a glamping tent in, it was like they were booked and it was like, boom, ready to go, and they were rocking and rolling. The park model cabins have been consistent over the last 4 years. We've seen the demand in the park model cabins be very consistent. I'm talking nights per year, where glamping, we've seen an uptick, earlier, and then now we're starting to see that kind of level off and come back down compared to what the park models were, because there was, to your point earlier, like a glamping experience was different maybe then as to now, what is the different type of glamping units that you offer. But I believe that consistency and the park itself, driving an experience. And if you have really unique glamping models on top of that, you'll probably be able to drive rate and demand to those units. But ultimately, the park itself collectively should drive an experience, not just the unit itself.
So for you at 4 Points, I'm curious, do you have a brand within a brand? Is there a 4 Points brand that, because you said you had 4 Jellystones and 2 Independents, right?
Yeah.
Is there a 4 Points experience that you're trying to deliver across all 6 properties, or is it different at a Jellystone versus an Independent?
I would say that, the Jellystone, probably a lot like KOA, they have guidelines that they allow people to operate in, but they also allow the individual parks to, create experiences within the park itself, without losing the Jellystone brand. So I think for us, again, it's about delivering an experience to where whenever a mom and dad show up and they've taken a 2-hour road trip pulling an RV, or if they're coming further away to camp in a park model, is that regardless if it's a Jellystone brand or if it's just a non-Jellystone park that we own, we still want to deliver that same experience. Lots of activities, lots of water features. Every park that we purchase and acquire has extreme value add opportunity. And that may be with adding more park model cabins, more glamping units, water features. I mean, we just got finished installing a really large water park at one of our Jellystone parks in Illinois. So we're looking for opportunity to add not only to the accommodation side of things, but also to the amenities as well as attractions and activities. So we're not going out and branding 4 Points, the 4 Points brand. We believe in, and we're even open to the KOA model as well in the future, because we believe that companies like KOA and Camp Jellystone have done such a good job of branding themselves. There's no need to recreate the wheel whenever you can tie your business to a recognizable brand. That's just how we feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am not going to make an argument against that, right? I can see that there's potential on both sides. You definitely are correct with what you just said. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and so some of the parks that we bought that we did not bring into the Jellystone system was because these parks were legacy parks that had been there for a while, that had such a large following on its own that it didn't make sense to rebrand them, which is the only reason why we haven't done that. We have also taken parks that we bought and brought it into the franchise that we felt needed that brand and needed that recognition. So I guess it's on a case-by-case basis. That's how we look at it.
So now for you, and I just want to touch base real quick. We were talking before the show, right, about how your new acquisition. First of all, congratulations. It's Bloomington, Indiana. Is that right?
We just closed on that last month. Correct. Yep, just outside of Indianapolis.
I just saw the article today, so I'm the last.
Okay.
But anyway, congratulations anyway.
Thank you.
But for you, as you go out and look to acquire in this, I don't want to say it's a negative climate, because I don't think it is, but a different climate than we were looking at last year or 2 years ago, before interest rates were raised and the economy had changed and things like that. Does that change your outlook on what you're looking for, or what your numbers are that you need to meet, or how you're acquiring?
We don't take a different approach on the type of asset we're looking for, but it certainly changes, the cap rate that was once had 2 years ago or maybe 3 years ago, as far as the price. So with interest rates moving up the way that they are, obviously that, the prices are going to have to come down somewhat. So we're starting to see that, and we're seeing sellers, understanding that more, that may have been holding on to a price that they thought they could get 2 years ago. That's not going to happen. So if they're still ready to sell, then right now is really a good time, in my opinion, to be a buyer, to maybe pick up an asset at a price point that you may not have been able to get, 2 years ago. And then as long as you do your due diligence and you underwrite it properly, then you can get a really quality asset at a good price. And then when rates come back down, you can take it and refinance it and cash flow even better. So we are certainly in the mode of, we're very acquisitive. We are looking for opportunities every day. So, some of the other players that may have been more acquisitive 2 years ago because rates were lower, it gives us an opportunity to look at assets that we may not have been in position to compete with. So I think for us, certainly it's a good time. And if rates go up a little bit, we're certainly building that into our due diligence. That way we can protect ourselves to make sure that we're not overpaying for parks today.
Appreciate you sharing that, sir. Thank you. That's kind of the sentiment that we're hearing from a lot of people, right? It doesn't really change my requirements for what I'm looking for, but it does maybe change some other things and in good ways for a lot of people. So, all right. So we talk about buying, we talk about selling, we talk about franchising, we talk about building experiences. Let's talk about hanging on to a park for 60 years. Shaun.
I've heard a lot of great points. I think that creating that memorable experience keeps that camper coming back for years to come. Generational campers is what I've had the experience of seeing, kids growing up camping, and just to kind of piggyback on some great points. That first and last impression, so important for a camper. What's that feeling when they come in the door, and what keeps them thinking about your park after they leave? We do our best to, offer any sort of assistance to a guest with a few more questions, maybe new to camping. We obviously have the veteran campers who are pretty self-sufficient, but, there is that clientele that may need a little bit more assistance. And I'm well aware, we're doing our best to retain that camper. While somebody's staying at your park, how is that person treated? How does staying at their park make them feel? We have a full service concierge desk that makes sure that all their campers questions outside of the park, how to make the most of their Key West camping experience, that attributes to that, 5-star camping experience. And like I said, I rely on a lot of great team members. Our staff, treats our campers like family, and they, do a great job in making sure that while they're here, they're treated with respect and treated the way that they would want to be treated. And, it goes a long way. There's a lot of campgrounds that people can stop at on their way down to Key West. We're a destination. We don't get any through traffic, and, we do our best, and sometimes expectations are a little high, and we do our best to meet those. So, creating that memorable experience like everybody's described, I think is super important in, retaining the customer.
So I'm very interested to explore this with you briefly, right? So you talk about the expectations in Key West, right? I've been to Key West twice, and I think that when the first time that I went there, right, was before I had traveled to a lot of different places. I think it was actually years and years ago. We went to the corporate KOA down there because Mike West sent us there to do a video. I think that was my first time to Key West. But when I first went down to Key West, I think my expectation was like, oh, this is going to be a tropical which it is, but also tons of beaches, which it's not.
Sure.
So what are some of the expectations that you kind of battle with? The perception, I think, is everybody thinks Key West is, just like we talked about before the show, that Key West is a perfect place to own a campground and nothing could ever go wrong in such a paradise, right? But what's the reality?
No, absolutely. We deal with our, own set of obstacles being down here, and we call it paradise. But yes, the Florida Keys is actually not known for its white, sandy, natural beaches. A lot of them are man-made. We have a little beach area that we maintain on the property. But, the beachfront camping and waterfront camping is where we've kind of made that distinguishing factor. We're right here on the waterfront. A lot of it is natural shoreline. A lot of it is riprap seawall. But, being close to the water, close to excursions and, things to do that get you out to, some of the most beautiful sandbars in the Keys, just offshore. So we have, companies that we work with pick up customers right from the boat, offer a half day, offer a full day excursion, whether or not you want to fish or an eco tour, paddle boarding, wildlife viewing. We do our best to kind of create that full experience with our full service concierge desk. But that beachfront, coined, for the Florida Keys doesn't really fit. And we correct people, quite often that, Florida Keys are not known for their beaches. A lot of beach restoration and beach nourishment that goes on. And, but it's still beautiful. It's still paradise. And there's a lot to see and do outside of just the island of Key West, on some of those natural mangrove islands and things like that. So.
What about a cheeseburger? Am I guaranteed a cheeseburger with Jimmy Buffett?
Cheeseburger in paradise. I heard he went on his farewell tour, so I don't know. He just missed that one. But,
bucket list item.
The man's really gonna have a farewell tour. He's got RV resorts. He's opening, right? But he's got his Margaritaville brand everywhere. So I don't know if Jimmy Buffett's ever gonna retire. But I want the Rooster. Isn't it Ernest Hemingway who's down there in the?
That's right.
And it ties in with a rooster that they run around Key West, though, right?
Yeah.
Yep, very well known for our roosters. We deal with them here at the campground, little natural alarm clocks, and we do the best to remind everybody they were here before us, so we're just coexisting.
All right, well, let me move on here because I want to talk about KOA's monthly research report here, and I think this is a good maybe segue here. You were talking about the fact at your Key West campground at Boyd's that your big part of your guest experience is that concierge offering, right? It's the being available to your guests to say, where do I go get a cheeseburger? Where do I see a rooster? Where do I go to maybe not a beach but see the ocean, right? And that's certainly valuable to curate that experience. But we've just had a research report come out, and Whitney's going to dive into some of the details here with us that have said that the way people are planning those trips might be changing. So Whitney, do you want to share some of that with us?
Yeah, definitely. KOA's monthly June research report just came out last week. And so probably the biggest headline is around campers' use of AI, and specifically using AI to understand and learn about campgrounds in the planning portion of their travel behavior. And it came out that 32% of campers are already utilizing AI versus 7% of non-campers, which is, I was telling this to you earlier, but we didn't believe it 3 months ago when our monthly, because we were looking at that kind of research 3 months ago, and we were like, maybe we just hit the perfect amount of people. We ran it again last month, and we're like, oh my gosh, it came back, and I was like, let's do it just one more time just to make sure. And 3 months in a row, we got the same results back. It's just this huge amount of campers that are already utilizing artificial intelligence in their planning process, and that they're the biggest one they're using, which makes sense, is ChatGPT. That's the one we hear about all the time in the media. But it's just really surprising to see that, and that campers have, trust in it. What I would say is from month to month, we did see campers' trust waning a little bit from month to month. But, I think there's just, as the media changes their perception of AI, that sways people's perception of what is happening. And in this last month, we saw some, bad news around AI, like companies losing a lot of copyright information and things like that. So I think that it's really positive for AI, artificial intelligence in general, and how we as a campground industry should and could be using it. However, there's also the swing of just how consumers feel about it.
Do you have a sense of what they're at? When you say planning a trip, that's obviously can be very broad, right? And maybe you don't know the answer to this question, and if not, just we'll go on a hypothetical, right? But when we talk about planning a trip, right, that's researching maybe the campground or the campgrounds in the area. That's researching what to do. That's a broad swath of things. Do you have a sense of what they're doing early on with it?
Yeah, so the most specific, we actually kind of said, what tasks are you using for AI for? And the top task by campers is actually seeking reviews from other travelers. So they're actually utilizing artificial intelligence to understand what other travelers are saying about certain places, certain campgrounds, certain camping activities. And then the second one was research, just researching campgrounds and things to do. The third highest one was actually building the itinerary itself. 48% of users said that they were actually using AI to build their itinerary.
Interesting. So I'm just trying to obviously I've played with a lot more things than most people have, I feel like, but it's very interesting early on that that's so high. Does this, any of our other guests here, let me toss this out, does any of this surprise you?
It very much surprises me. I'm surprised. What I found even more surprising, and I don't know if we touched on this stat yet, but that the research from the KOA report showed campers having a higher degree of confidence in AI than non-campers. That was a big surprise to me. I do have a question about as I understand AI, and Brian, you probably have a good grasp of the limitations, or maybe I'm misunderstanding them. But I thought that ChatGPT was stuck somewhere in September 2021 or something like that.
Sort of, but go ahead, Whitney. I want to hear what KOA's
Yeah,
research
so the question then extends to, if you're getting reviews and if you're gathering information, most reviews are going to be more relevant to, the most recent reviews. I think you can put your money on as a better bet than further out reviews. I'm just curious how they're compiling information about information that might be outdated if it is behind that 2021 firewall.
It's a really good conversation. And I think users don't have a lot of background in how AI is actually working. They hear about ChatGPT and they're like, oh, this is the newest thing. They don't understand that it could actually have out of date information and they could get better information. So I think that also has to play into that, like, trust. As more people are understanding more about how these platforms work, I think it's really interesting that, we've seen a decline in trust, even though we see an increase in use.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting from my perspective, and I still want to hear both Shaun and Keva's take on it, if you have a take on this or if you play with things. But I think to your specific question, Scott, it can access the internet now. Number one is, so if you pay for a $20 a month plus subscription to ChatGPT, you have the ability to browse the internet with Bing now. And then you also have access to an app store with 500 apps, and some of those apps are able to browse Google in real time and do all kinds of other cool things, right? But I think this is forgetting about that for a second. I think what Whitney said, and sometimes I forget this, right? Because I'm so deep into, I know everything about AI. What do you mean? Everybody doesn't know that too? For some of the stuff, right? But I think that's interesting. So if you're on ChatGPT and you ask it, like, can you give me a review of Boyd's Key West Campground, right? Or just pick, or Boheme Retreats, or just picking something out, 4 Points Resorts, right? It's very possible that the user does not realize, one, that A, these might be old, but B, more likely, ChatGPT is actually just making them up. So how does that's actually very dangerous territory for some businesses, depending on what it says, right?
I'd agree with that point. We've used it internally for, if we need to create a job description for something, then we would use ChatGPT to go ahead and we'd spell out what we're looking for. No, I don't do it. I mean, our HR department does it. They'll say, okay, if we want to hire this person for this, and this is what our expectations are, it'll build it out. But we go back and we review the job description that it put together and make some changes like that. It really cuts down on the time, but it's not like we just tell it to do something and then and not review it. We certainly are reviewing what it's putting out. Now, whether campers are doing the same thing, are they going back and checking, okay, well, let me just verify this. Let me go take a look at some Google reviews. Let me go take a look at some Facebook.
No, they're for sure not.
So, I doubt it. But so you are correct. The information is only as good as what it's spitting out. So, I would agree that there probably is a little bit of danger there if people take it, for face value.
I don't know if there's really a way to control that, though, right? Because, like, I can go in, and we've done this today, right? When we've researched campgrounds or something that we're doing marketing for, we'll go to the plugin area, we'll use something like WebPilot, and we know that we can say, like, go get me the last 5 Google reviews for this campground, and then summarize the good and bad points about it or whatever. And it will do that in real time, and it will be accurate. But without plugins on, without the browsing on, it's not. I don't know if there's actually a way for a campground to control this. Like, how do you battle that perception?
I think that it could also be at some point, once people decide how they're going to view using AI for reviews, it's no different than somebody saying, okay, let me go look at Facebook. And if you have a 4-star and you've got 10 good reviews and 3 bad reviews, ultimately, I would hope that campers will still make their own, they'll still formulate their own opinion based on their experience. Hopefully they're not just listening to this as, this is, it means everything. Hopefully that they're still using some sense and still.
Well, I'm sure they are. And again, I don't think that ChatGPT is really going to make up something bad about a campground, right? In most cases, I think it's either going to say, like, I can't pull real-time reviews or I can't access the internet. That's been my experience with it, right?
Okay.
But if it is spitting out a review, that looks like something. I feel like the danger there is just misinformation, is saying maybe, somebody loved the playground or the swimming pool and they don't have a playground, don't have a swimming pool, right? I think that's more the danger than.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think to your point, Brian, there is a little bit of danger there, and there's like what if it pulls something that the campground was closed in 2021 for some reason, or even recently, and it could inadvertently pull that information. We just don't know how it gets all the information about all the campgrounds. And but what I would say, positively or negatively, I don't think we're at the infancy of this technology. So there's a lot of catch up that's probably going to happen to make sure that there's a little bit more factual information. Businesses will come in a little bit more and more into like how to utilize the technology and utilize it appropriately. So I think right now we're kind of seeing the Wild West of AI. People are just all over the place, and I think we'll see some leveling, and it only can get better from here, I think.
For sure, and we've already seen that, right? Like I mean, at least from my perspective, and we won't get into the weeds here, right? But with GPT-4, the new model that came out in March, like I don't see it making up 98% of what comes out of that thing is fact now, from what we can tell. Like obviously, it still needs fact checked, but when we do that, we're not finding as many problems as we did in the early days. But I think the bigger problem is it's not really a problem, but it's just a time period. Is when does the camper or whoever's using it adjust to the new, this is how things are, this is how I use it, this is how I don't use it? Because I think we've all been trained for 24 years. Same thing as Google, who's going to have AI search now. They've announced that a couple weeks ago, to Bing, who's going to have AI search, and Bing is real time and Google will be real time. But we're very used to the last 24 years of dumbing down everything we type into Google into 2 keywords to try to get right. And now you don't do that. Now the demo that Google gave on stage was, I want to go to Zion National Park, or I can't remember what's the name of the other national park in Utah, right down there by Zion. I can't remember, but they asked the question, and they said, which one is better for me if I have 2 kids and a dog? And that was the whole question, instead of just national parks near Utah, right? And then you go click around and read. And so it actually gave an answer and said, these trails are dog friendly, while this park doesn't have dog friendly trails, and this one is better for kids because the hiking trails are easier to navigate, and so this is the park you should go to. And I think that behavior is going to take some time to change in the consumer. But when it does, we better be ready as an industry.
I think that's interesting. And I think that from one perspective, it makes a lot of sense that AI would be popular in this space, particularly with the form of hospitality that we do. This is also a lot of people's hobby. This is their passion. People love to camp. And Shaun touched on it earlier. There's a wide variety in the camper we see. We have the people that learned from their dad years ago, and they continue the generational thing. And then you get people that are brand new to camping. And I see it being really valuable in terms of like, I'm trying to figure camping out. What do I need to pack? Where do I start? How do I renovate a camper? How do I do these things? I see it being real practical there. And it wouldn't surprise me if people are using this as an education to their hobby and to their passion. But it is interesting that we're identifying all these gaps and these potential dangers of using it to compare a specific campground with maybe another campground, depending on what version they're on or plugins they have.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, right? I think that's exactly what we're talking about as it relates to the statistics from the KOA monthly research report that show that more people who camp are using it than more non-campers. And I think that's probably a big contributor to that, is the fact that there's a whole lot more involved with going camping than there is staying at a hotel. There's the two. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. And think about it like how the question was about Zion, like two kids, a dog. Think about like an RV. I've got a 35-foot, travel trailer. I've got 2 slide outs, and I'm hauling a car. So even like how campers have to think about getting a site, it almost lends itself to AI more than it would to like trying to get it summarized enough for a regular Google search.
Yeah, I 100% agree. What are your thoughts, Shaun or Keva or the other Shaun? Or you guys want to weigh in on this at all?
No, I mean, I think that you guys are hitting on some very good topics, and I think time will just tell how this all plays out. But I mean, it's certainly the industry, and life in general is certainly getting more getting technologically advanced. So we got to be prepared for it, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that's just. Yeah.
I was just going to point out, Brian, I don't think we're the only industry, dealing with this. I mean, this generation has so much information at the tip of their finger. Who's filtering it? Who's making sure it's the right decision for a particular guest? And I still don't think that, the southernmost hospitality that we've branded and we embody goes away. If a customer does find out about us through a chat, through AI and things like that, still have to retain that customer. So I'm obviously excited, a little frightened about certain AI aspects in our society, but for camping, I see our equation and the way we have been doing things. We want to adjust with the times and utilize new technology, but we're pretty comfortable in what we're doing right now too.
Well, no, and I think you're very right. That's a whole interesting discussion too, right? Because I think you're very correct. I think and I've had people come to me and say, well, why do you want to put AI everywhere? And why do you want to force technology on people? And from my perspective, right, and we do customer service with the bots that we've created, and they're concierges too, right? But the whole goal with that, in my mind, is getting people the camping experience better or faster, right?
Sure.
So get them to answer their questions quicker, get them their planning of the trip better, whether it's through our bot or through ChatGPT or through whatever it is, right? So they can get outside and disconnect quicker.
There you go.
That's the way I hope it works in an ideal world, and I think it will always continue to be that way. I don't think it's ever going to replace the guest experience, the personal nature that you like. That's what people love the outdoors for.
How do you use it to enhance that customer experience? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think those things just need to be thought of how do you don't look at it as this is a negative because it's more technology, but how can technology help me with getting them to less technology? And I think that's really where at least I want to see the industry go, I hope. But what else was in your research report, Whitney? There was other things besides AI, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the surprising things and actually combining some of the statistics to kind of make that story is like we're seeing a lot, Memorial Day, we saw, another 2 million more camper households out this Memorial Day than last. But what was surprising in that is that 8 million of those camping households, which is about a third, also did some other type of travel during their camping Memorial Day weekend or week. So that, and what we're really seeing is like, we have to look at the camper as not just a camper. A camper is a traveler, because what we're seeing is they have this really, really high propensity to want to try or go to other types of hospitality types like hotels and road trips. And so knowing that from a campground industry, we really have to focus kind of on our first topic being that experience set, is that our travelers are no longer just saying like, this is my camping weekend. They're more looking for, I want this type of experience. How do I do that? I want to go to Key West. What are my options? Instead of saying I'm going camping and I'm going to Key West. And I think that what we're seeing is a lot more variation, even within the same time frame of a vacation, is that people are kind of trying more things. And I think that there's a little bit coming off of COVID, as I camped a lot. And so now I'm kind of wanting to do a few more other things. And we really have to protect that as campground owners to say, we're going to try to make sure that we're selling the experience more than just we're offering camping.
If I can add on to that's awesome data. And if you can direct me to where that component is, because one of the things that IVEE Management Group works with owners to try to help them through is it's not unusual for an owner to have a conversation with the local governing agency, be it the local planning board or economic development council or chamber, because there's, people tie in RV parks and mobile home parks into the same brand, right? And so owners are always having to have that conversation of, we're a camping resort, we're a hospitality organization, and guests are coming and they're visiting our park, yes, but they are putting money into the local community. And I think that's a big, that data point would be a big help to campground owners and managers to help justify that they're really a local jurisdiction is doing themselves a favor by recognizing the true economic dollar that those campers are bringing to local areas.
I have that piece of data. It's in the North American Camping and Outdoor Hospitality Report that was released, but I can send you to it. It's really important, to your point, that campers are putting $52 billion into our local communities, and that's not just into like camping, that's into our local communities and how they're, I'm coming camping, but I'm going to restaurants. Also, what they're doing, we can actually show that they're, going to restaurants. We've actually looked at like their daily spend. So yeah, I can definitely send that to you, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is for sure interesting to me too. And from the flip side too. So we've talked about how, maybe we've got campers who are doing multiple things during their trip. And we've talked about maybe I hadn't considered it before, right? But maybe we don't want to consider it, right? But the fact that they're maybe one or two of them, right, is burnt out from camping over and they want to take a little bit of a break. But what about the flip side? Because even though we had a ton of people come into this industry over 21, 22, who were getting outside, who were buying RVs for the first time, who were exploring the lifestyle, there's still a disproportionately large number of people who have never done that. So are there opportunities for us, especially with that glamping sector, and whether that's glamping in a tent or a yurt or a dome or a cabin at a campground, right? Are there more opportunities there for us, do you think, to continue reframing that, yes, I'm a hotel person, but maybe this is something that I would consider too?
I would say yes. I think people are looking for those memorable experiences outside of that hotel experience. And whether or not it's your cabin or your yurt or your glamping tent, we're seeing that more and more people are renting RVs, working with a company, delivering the RV to the site, setting it up for the guest. We implemented a few tiny homes. We have some waterfront, some houseboats in the works that we feel like offer a unique experience that people just aren't getting in your typical hotel check-in, check-out. You never meet your neighbor. You keep the door shut. And, I think there's definitely opportunity still there.
But how do we reach these people is my question, right? And so, and the answer to that is twofold from my standpoint, right? And I think when I'm hired to run a Facebook ad campaign for a campground, the default is we're going to go target the audience who is already interested in us. So we're going to look for a demographic that likes camping or RVing or things like that, right? But that by definition excludes those people who may have never tried the industry before. And we've tried Google ad campaigns and dipped our toes in the water with, a rural location isn't getting as many bookings as they were last year. So maybe we can target that hotel audience, go to a landing page that tells the story of why glamping is better than hotels. And that's worked to a certain extent. But is there a way that we can envision bringing more of this industry on a broader scale, awareness of not necessarily RVing, because RVing is important, but RVing requires a big investment if you're not going to go rent one. So how do we expose that outdoor lifestyle to more people and bring them into this industry in ways that we maybe don't default to traditionally?
Like for Jellystone, what I can tell you is that Jellystone has gotten away from marketing themselves as a campground. They've started marketing themselves as an experience with accommodations, or you can bring your RV if you have one. So I think it really goes back to what experience are you delivering on site, regardless if it's someone who's never been there and is running a cabin. What experience are they going to get? And I think it's important that whenever you're targeting the customer base that you're looking for is to sell not only the accommodation, but more of what is the overall experience that they can expect whenever they're on property.
So how do we get them there though, right? Like how do we get them to that experience? How do we tell the story of, without having millions of dollars to put out commercials during the Super Bowl and things like that, right? How do we teach some of these owners that you can bring this audience in, but it's a awareness standpoint that's a long-term game?
Yeah. I'll tell you, like for us, Brian, what's been successful as far as our marketing, we've seen our occupancy actually grow year after year, even prior to, from prior to COVID, even through COVID, and now we're still seeing an increase year over year over year in occupancy per site night, and we're seeing ancillary revenue per site night growth. So we are seeing growth across the portfolio. I am not a marketing expert, so I can't speak to that. Maybe I can have Matt Vandermolen come on one time in my place, and you guys can certainly talk about that a little bit more. But what I can tell you is that, we certainly use social media a lot for a way to do our marketing. It's a very affordable way to do it and to reach a lot of people. But I think it's all about the content. We do certainly do. We do a lot of direct emails to existing customers and whatnot, to still capture returning business. But we're also going outside of, let's just say, a 60-mile radius or 100-mile radius, and we're trying to capture an audience that's further away, and we're selling them on, okay, we are an affordable family vacation destination. So, we're not competing with Disney World, SeaWorld, Six Flags or things like that. We are competing with, a much lower, more affordable. Somebody can stay with us for 3 or 4 days in a glamping unit for a week or whatever it is, for what it would cost them to stay at another destination, for half the time. So I think it's selling an affordable experience to people. I guess it really just depends. My target customer may be totally different than what Shaun has down in Key West. I think it's really just about understanding the customer base that you're going for and just learning how to appeal to them.
Well, I guess
Keva, sorry, I was going to say Keva is probably the best example because she's got a glamping resort catering to New York. It's a market that hasn't been known for camping. I'd love to hear from her how she's doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely the new one in the group here, but for what I've sort of like started is very Instagrammable. So I've really like focused on that. And so this season, just trying to get influencers out, that's really helped. Getting them to share, come and enjoy and really show their experience to, other people, especially that are in the city that love to travel, that, we're right here. We're just 2 hours from Manhattan. So it's like an easy commute. Something that we've also been, a lot of our customer base, they don't have cars. They rely on public transportation. And so, as we've been getting press or whatever, just really trying to share that there's easy ways to access our campground from the city. And people have really loved that idea that they can take a bus and, just a quick Uber to our campsite, So there's ways to, get into nature and just really like letting people know that we're close by, that it's easy to do, and that, just most of our campers are new campers. So just really trying to make the experience seem, effortless for them to come and explore, and that, they're going to be safe. We always have like, especially like city folks, are there bears, just really sharing the story of being outdoors and just how easy it is. But social media has been key for, especially just like a new business trying to get the word out.
I've got some ideas I can loft out there too, and I love the social media component. I think that tells the story beautifully. One thing the IVEE group is doing is that we're bringing a full-time revenue manager on board, and one of the roles that revenue manager is going to be looking at is what channels are we selling our campsites on. So I think that's one way, is because people are used to going to Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia.com. And as our property management systems become better and more sophisticated, we're able to be side by side now with hotel rooms, right, on Expedia or on Booking. And that's a brilliant and beautiful thing to get people exposure to. The other way that hotels typically handle this is really working within that local community, so that you have that revenue manager reaching out to local businesses to say, hey, have you ever thought about having your employees stay here instead of the courtyard down the street? Or checking with the local convention and visitors bureau. Hey, we've got a big rec space. If you guys are throwing a convention for 50 people, we're a perfect option for you because we got a bunch of camp spots. There's a lot of things. The other thing that we're really encouraging our park managers to do is have a greater presence in the local tourism market. So joining the Economic Development Council so that they can hear about the events that are being hosted in that city in the following year. So they can submit bids to be considered for those conferences and conventions. So getting really plugged in on all those channels is a good way to get that exposure out as well.
All right, I feel like I could have this question for another hour, but everybody probably has things to do, and I'm sure there's something I need to be doing somewhere, maybe. But I will wrap this up and say this is one of the things that really excites me about the future, right? And Whitney, I know you'll be back with us to share more of the amazing research that the KOA is going to do. But this is one of the things that really excites me about the industry going forward, is that we have this untapped, almost, I don't want to say unlimited, but a very big potential to say, we've got our campers, we've got the new people who came over 21 and 22, but we also have this largely untapped and unmarketed to demographic who we're doing little by little at Boheme Retreats and other places, right? But who basically give us a market that not everybody's going to like camping, not everybody's going to go to glamping, but a significant number of them would, as Whitney said, not necessarily become a glamper or become a camper, but mix it into some of the other activities they're doing. And if that's one extra night here, one extra night there, those things are going to add up. And I think they're going to be great for our industry in the future. So do we have any final thoughts from anybody? No? Everybody's going to be quiet now?
Keep on camping.
Whitney, what's in next month's research report? Will you give us a hint? Is it a secret?
The research tells us. I mean, we put a ton of questions out there, and whatever seems significant, we try to bring to the industry. So it's a surprise to me, just like it's a surprise to you.
But it's going to be significant. That was a good teaser to come back.
Yeah, exactly. It will be significant.
Yes, that's what we're looking for. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. I mean, we have 3 minutes left, but we just want to call it early if nobody else has anything to say. All right. Well, thank you, Shaun, from Boyd's Campground. Appreciate you. Best of luck to another 60 years or so.
Keep making the right decisions, hopefully. So appreciate you guys having me.
It sounds like you're doing it. So, and Keva, best of luck at Boheme Retreats. We'd love to have you back on the show sometime. Check in and see how things are going as you continue to build on the east and west of the Hudson River. Shaun, 4 Points is hopefully to have you back as well. Super excited to see 4 Points continued growth, and Scott Knepp from IVEE, and obviously Whitney. We appreciate you being here. So we'll see you guys next week in another episode of Fireside Chats. Take care, guys.
Pleasure talking with you guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for watching this episode of MC Fireside Chats, hosted by Brian Searl and Kara Sismadia. Have a suggestion for a future show or want to see your campground or company as part of an episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Join us next week for another episode. And don't miss the latest outdoor hospitality news and commentary from around the world at moderncampground.com.